So we're on to number 4. This one is that kids are too young to understand the brain stress and self-reg.
They got to meet your daughter.
She was talking about digda, said amygdala. That was her version of amygdala. 3 years old, I think. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lesson we learned from our friend Jean Clinton.
Yes.
So Jean would come and she has her porcupine doll and
Hippopotamus.
A hippopotamus, and really, I've yet to meet a child that can't get this at a very young age if you present it in terms that they can resonate with it.
Absolutely. I personally find our red brain, blue brain is really helpful. You know, I don't have my glove here today, but that it's really helpful to kids. And this little guy, I told you a story earlier about the little one and the frisbee.
Yeah.
So afterwards, this is just a few minutes later, I said to him, you guys, hey, to him and the other little guy, do you want to learn a little bit about their brain?
Yeah, I love it.
And I painted my thumb is even still red. I painted my thumb and I was talking to them about, you know, red brain, blue brain, and just that the red brain, you know, had gone boom. Because they told me, one of the early childhood educators said that sometimes this kid that says I'm a bad kid. And so as soon as I hear that, it breaks my heart, of course. But I always think those kids especially will benefit from learning red brain, blue brain, because it helps them understand that that's a different part of my brain was running the show, not I'm a bad kid, you know, and this is what I can do about it. And you know what he came up, and this is 4 years old, and I spent 4 seconds with him, you know, talking about it. He came up afterwards and asked me, do turtles have brains? You know, and so, I mean, there was so...
Did you answer it?
Yeah, well, as best I could, but...
You forgot your McLean.
Oh, honestly. So yeah. Oh, yeah, I should have. Absolutely. I never even thought that's a reptilian brain where we're going here. But, you know, but they are interested and they're curious about it, and it's kind of fun. And, you know, they imagining what's going on inside of their heads. And with him, I was walking around saying, that's the other thing I did with him, is it's not just what's in your head, it's about making your foot move. So let's think about you know, and all of a sudden for him to recognize that, like there's so much we can do with it. That's a gift that we give kids. I really feel that.
I did it once with a little kid that was hunched over, and she was hitting her head against her arms, like really full-blown. And so, and completely resistant to any kind of any kind of talking down or, I mean, useless, and didn't want to be touched, anything. And I remember I said to her, I said, you know, what we've got to do is we've got to take really deep breaths now, as slowly as we can, and then let it in, because we want it. And then I said to her, we have to get oxygen into your brain. Your brain's saying that we need oxygen. And what was astonishing was instantly she perked up and she said, my brain needs oxygen. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
But you know, it's the other piece of the lesson why self-reg is a process and not a program, because there is a bit of a dance to it.
Yes,
and that doesn't mean you have to have studied it for 25 years or whatever you've done. You can learn this stuff, but you have to learn to kind of read and trust your own instincts and the rhythm of the moment when it, like that little guy, if I'd have talked to him about his brain while we were on the playground equipment, he wouldn't have heard a word I said. But this was after I recognized the signs that Blue Brain was back online, and I took an opportunity to have a little conversation. So when I started talking to my daughter, I didn't sit her down and teach her a lesson and pull up a PowerPoint. I did none of that. But over time, a little bit, you're always talking about the brain, and and started with the blue brain and red brain and explaining what was going on at different times. And then all of a sudden, you start finding her like she'll tell me, Mom, she'll tell me you just went red brain, Mom. But yours too.
Mine will too, yeah.
Sammy she freezes up a little bit on the camera, but she totally gets it, right? And so it's just sort of weaving it into the natural relationship.
The only thing I would add to that, since we're talking about the myth, this would be a sort of subsidiary myth.
Yes.
And that would be that you can learn this, like in a 1-hour PD session. And it's really what you and I were talking about off camera, why it's so important to go through foundations.
Yeah.
To really be, the more grounded you are in all this, and the more you've done all of those sort of experiential aspects of the foundations, the more you can do that in the moment dance. Oh, that's a great metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, let's face it, a dance, this is a dance with two partners, and every one of them is different.
And it's, you know, it's important. And even you saying that my daughter understands this, she can't explain the 5 steps of self-reg because she's lived them. You know, she can tell you about red brain and blue brain. So she does the reframing, but she doesn't know it's called. Like, there's a whole lot more to it, and that's a very, very important point for the adults.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So.